Hey everybody, Mike here again, today with another quick little tutorial. Today we're going to be talking about more or less the basic necessities of animation inside of 3ds Max, and this is meant to lead into other tutorials that I'll be putting out in the next little bit, some things that tie in with our cloth animations that seem to be fairly popular with everyone. And so yeah, let's get started here. One thing to keep in mind as we move forward here is this is one of the subjects that I could literally spend 5 minutes teaching you, but will take a lifetime to master. Animation is just one thing to master when it comes to 3D modeling and visual effects, CGI, all that fun stuff. So let's get started here. As you can see on my screen, I just have 4 teapots, and today we're going to put them just through a little race. They're going to race from one end of the grid to the other, and this will hopefully give you a good idea as to what auto key can do. Auto key, just so everybody knows, is down here on the right. We can click it, it'll highlight the viewport in red, or we can just hit N, as in November, as a shortcut. And what auto key really does is it monitors your scene and it looks for changes in, say, for example, position, scale, rotation of objects, amongst just about everything else that Max has available. It will recognize a change and it'll automatically drop a keyframe on our timeline for us. Now that can be a good or a bad thing depending on what you're doing, so just keep that in mind. There are plenty other ways to manage your timeline and keyframes as we go throughout. Some are very more advanced than others, but we're just going to cover the basics here. So let's get started. On the bottom of the viewport we have our timeline. We can scrub back and forth. You'll notice that there's nothing there. Nothing happening in the scene. So let's go ahead and select all 4 of these teapots. Now we know that they're all starting at the same place, and that is frame 0. But you'll notice that we don't have any keyframes here. So what I'm going to do, since AutoKey doesn't really know where we're starting from, we're going to hit the Set Key button, and what that's going to do is it's going to populate a keyframe right there on 0. That's our starting point. And you'll notice it's multicolored, and that is for position, rotation, and scale. Now we can change what filters show up in the timeline. It's another time. That's for another time, of course. But for right now, we'll just be focusing on those 3 properties: scale, rotation, position. And so what we need to do is we need to go to frame 100, because we know that's where our timeline's just going to end today, and we know that they're all going to be at this side of the grid. So let's go ahead and move them over. And as soon as I let go of the mouse button, you'll notice that another keyframe is dropped at frame 100. That's auto key saying, I noticed you've made a change in your scene. Let's put a keyframe for all the objects you have selected wherever your timeline is currently. So if we scrub this back and forth, you'll notice that these now move from 0 to 100 and cover the full distance. Now let's say that we want to have a clear winner. We want blue to be our winner. So instead, what I'm going to do is let's grab all 3 of these guys, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab their keyframe that's on 100, and I'm going to say, I'm doing this backwards. Let's move that. Let's grab blue. Since they're going to be our winner, they're going to hit the finish line first. They're going to get there at frame 75. And so what's going to happen is, now we've kind of modified where that keyframe sits, and if we select all 3 of them, you'll notice that they all still have their own individual keyframes, but there is one that is different, and that is blues. So if we bounce back and forth, you'll notice that that keyframe that auto key originally set just kind of bounces back as we've modified that. And so obviously we get a clear winner there. Now we can still play with this. We can say, yellow, you know what, I want you to be pretty far ahead at frame 25. So we'll make sure that you're way up here. And you'll notice the auto key dropped another keyframe in there. So now if we scrub the timeline, yellow shoots far ahead, but then blue just kind of closes that gap and finishes the race first. And we can keep playing with this. We can say, you know what, at 45 red, I want you to be way back here. Green at 60, let's have you, push towards the end here. And now we can just hit the play button over here and just kind of watch things happen. Right? And that'll loop through until we're done previewing it. We can also change things like rotation. So let's say that halfway through the race we want blue. Let's go to 35. We want blue to do a 180 turn. And let's say that at the end we want blue to make that a full 360-degree turn. I'm going to do this just to illustrate something real quick here. So AutoKey has noticed that there's differences in the scene. It drops keyframes in for position, rotation, scale on whichever frame we're in with whichever object we're actually modifying. One thing you'll notice though is though all the movement is the same, or the way that we expect it, the rotation of blue, when it gets to frame 75, he's already gone to the full distance, but now he's still kind of rotating in place. Well, we want that rotation to end on frame 75, just like his movement. So let's stop this for a second. And I know what you're saying, well, that's easy. You can just be in rotation mode, and you can just grab this keyframe and bring it back to meet the position. Well, we could, but there's also a different way, and this will hopefully give you enough to want to dive into animation and carry on things a little bit further in your research. So all we're doing right now is we're just modifying a timeline. There are plenty of other animation tools inside of 3ds Max that hopefully you'll become more familiar with. There's like dope sheets, curve editors, really anything that has one of these spinners in Max, these up and down arrows, can be keyed, which means that we can actually drop down keyframes for those specific elements or attributes in however we need it. If you'll notice, there's this little Open Mini Curve Editor button here, and this just opens up a mini curve editor just to give you an idea. There's a fuller one that we can attach as an actual viewport. And what this does is, as we're moving through the timeline, you'll notice that we have little gray boxes here. These are our keyframes. And right now I've got blue selected. These are the keyframes of blue as it moves over the timeline. And you'll notice that red is for position, is red our scale? Should be position. But blue is our rotation. And you'll notice that everything stops at 75 except for blue. Blue continues on until 100. Now we could have moved that on the timeline, but we can also move it here. So what I'm going to do is going to grab this. Right now it's sitting at frame 100, and we're just going to move that back to 75. So now if we play, it will end its rotation as soon as it ends its position. Anyways, this is a little mini curve editor. Feel free to dive into it. It is really fascinating, especially if you start getting really into animation. You can tweak things to your heart's content with this. And really, the learning never stops. There's ways to change these curves, so you can make things exaggerated or slow. We can really play with that rotation. Anyways, give it a try. It's a lot of fun. But this is meant to just be an introduction to AutoKey, just to kind of get your feet wet. Definitely play around with it, see how it feels. If you have any questions, ask me in the comments. I'll get back to them as quick as I can. Otherwise, look forward to the next tutorials that are coming up. I'm working on a couple that will really kind of dig into some other meatier parts of cloth and whatnot. So anyways, thanks for watching, and we will see you next time.